Welcome back to Beauty Marks Podcast. My name is Liz Savillon, and welcome back to another episode. Here we talk about all things community, embracing our story, and healing. And I am so excited to be here at Hi Hello Labs in downtown Orlando. If you have any content creation or events that you have here in Orlando, this is the perfect place to do it. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. All of that helps us to grow, and I am just so thankful for your feedback because that helps us figure out what we're talking about, what are you guys loving, what would you love to hear more about. So today's episode, I have a special guest that's back again, Jojo Venant, and she is a mental health counselor, but you guys loved her episode. We actually did a little mini series on It's Complicated Relationships. So welcome back, Jojo.
Thank you. So happy to be back.
How are you doing?
I'm doing so good. Feels good to be here.
Yeah. I feel like last time we were here, we literally we're just going to do this on the fly. We're going to talk about It's Complicated Relationships, and it went really well. And I feel like a lot of people had questions of like, okay, so what if this scenario? And actually, if still to this day, people are still commenting like, what if it's been a year and he's still like saying he's not ready, or he's trying to go with the flow. And I'm like, girl, and there's even people within the comments that are answering like, let him go, girl, run. Girl. So it's really funny. I'm gonna send it to you after this.
You have to.
But on today's episode, I know that you have recently published again your Clarity our magazine about toxic relationships. And I wanted to go kind of into that today of toxic dynamics within ourselves. Like, what was kind of your inspo first about this edition that you did?
Well, first of all, just Chasing Clarity itself, the magazine has been just such an outlet for me, and just thinking about what message I want to get across, right? What do I see in my clients? What do I see in people and things that would help them? And let me tell you, if there ain't toxic in everything, I don't know what is. In every kind of relationship, whether it's platonic, friendship, parental, romantic, it's like there's a lot of behaviors, even within ourselves.
Yeah.
So I wanted to touch on something that everybody could relate to in one way or another, and just be able to talk about it from different angles, whether it's a workplace. So, Maria Fernandez, who's been a guest here, she talked about, toxic bosses. Sueli Rivera, who's also been a guest, she talked about the toxic church. They did amazing in that. We have toxic positivity. We have toxic masculinity. We talked about a little bit of everything. So my inspo was to really just reach people at different places in their lives, so that they can just take a look at what's around them and what's within them and try to be a better version of themselves, to be honest.
I think all those topics were really good because I feel like we sometimes talk about it in like toxic relationships, but there are so many ways. And something that I know that you wanted to talk about today is like, how are we toxic? Am I the toxic one? Is it me? Maybe I am toxic.
Maybe I am.
And how do we figure that out? Like, where do we start there?
Well, it's the hardest thing to figure out because we can enter denial so easily because that is a way of coping. It's not a healthy way of coping, but it's a way of coping. When we don't see something, it's not there, right? So I would say the very number one thing is, one, accept that you want to see more, right? So once you've entered that place of, I actually do want to see what's within me that's good, bad, ugly, and I want to make those changes. So like that's the very, very first step. But you wouldn't even imagine how many people aren't there. You know where they're at? I need to point out what's wrong in this person or that person. They will enter because their relationship is having issues because their partner is showing toxic traits, right? So the very first thing is that self-awareness. And if we want to go a little deeper than that, it's like once you've hit that place, and let's say you don't want to really explore it yet, you're not ready to talk to other people about, your own toxic traits, you start looking at your patterns. Your patterns.
How can they show up there? What would that look like?
So I'm going to give you an example of a personality kind of trait that really resonates with a lot of people. I hear this so much. I tell it as it is. That's who I am. I am straight up. I am, really forward. And this is who I am. All right, baby. So let's talk about how that's affecting your work life. Let's talk about how that's affecting your friendships, your romantic partner, your parents, your siblings. Like, is it showing up in different parts of your life where that tell it how it is isn't working for
And
you?
it's actually ruining all your relationships.
They're not safe with you
Yeah.
because you're a cactus. So you tell it as it is, thank you, but you're not very comfy. And you don't always have to be comfy.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to tell it as it is. But that's one area where I can say I see very often. And to me, it's a self-defense mechanism. Like, you really are, I'm going to get you before you get me. I'm going to, present this way because, well, maybe they were taken advantage of before. Maybe they witnessed others being taken advantage of, and the heck with me, that ain't happening with me.
Yeah. Or even I also feel like people that work like that, of like, I'm going to say it how it is because they were brought up that there was no space for anything else. Like, they weren't allowed to feel or have that compassion. So then they feel like, oh no, I'm going to give you that tough love. And it's like, I don't think that you were given also that space to like be safe,
Yeah. You know where else I see it too? So let's say you weren't a tell it as it is, then you enter therapy. And you're like, wait, I have a voice. And this is where, hopefully you have some friends you can communicate with, because it can be a little difficult. I was there where I was like, okay, so I want to voice I have a voice. So I want to share this. And you're just like still learning how to share it. So, you know, it doesn't come off as good,
Yeah.
and then you got to learn, it's like
how to be clear and have boundaries.
And sometimes you don't have to say everything.
Yeah.
So I see it there too when you're like asserting and learning
That's
to.
me. Yeah. I feel like I would say that my toxic trait, if we're honest, and I mean, I still do. So I'll talk about the past, and then I'll talk about the present.
Let's do it.
So, and we can do it. I feel like my toxic trait before was my need to be liked. And so I would do and like pick up on cues to become a chameleon to be liked by you. So it's like, you like something, oh my God, me too. Like, you like, but then my other toxic trait was like the passive aggressiveness of like not knowing my needs or not how to say it. So then I would become passive aggressive, which is not a healthy way to cope. Trying to think what other. I was very in the people pleasing, codependency state. So I feel like my toxic, a lot of those things came out of that. And then I became like angry.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
But it's like that anger, it's kind of like that's the part where the change happens, So were you graceful with yourself during that time?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
No.
Why am I so mad?
No, I think that even the confrontation, it's funny that we're bringing that up because earlier this month we had an episode on people pleasing. And I think that was of like, am I a people pleaser? And like how to navigate through that and like how to show grace and compassion with yourself. But a lot of the time, like when you feel like you are getting your voice back, you're like, I'm going to tell everybody that they cannot cross me. But that is a self-defense mechanism because you're like, I've been there, absolutely never going to go back to that, to be walked all over.
Yeah.
But that becomes toxic.
Yeah.
What about you?
It really does. It really does. That's a place where it's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
For sure.
What about you? What were maybe early years? We'll talk BC.
Before a counselor, before Christ, which one?
Before counseling.
Before counseling. So here's a funny story. I had not stepped foot in a counseling office while doing the therapy program. I graduated from the therapy program with my master's in counseling psychology, and I had never been the client.
What?
I know, I'm embarrassed
How is that
to say.
Legal? I'm kidding.
Now you have to go through the program.
You have to do hours, right?
You have to. And I was actually brought on back by the school to work with students. That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. But I didn't put two and two together that, that I needed it. Because, okay, so here's another thing with like toxic traits is that denial phase also really just sustains you through some trauma. Okay. So I'm going through the program. I am learning and identifying and seeing all these things. And I'm not quite really seeing what's within myself, right? I'm really not. I was more focused on what's in others. So still, it wasn't until, so I'm going to admit something real quick. Okay. It wasn't until I was brought on by a very popular therapist who does amazing work in her community. Her name is Janie Lacey. She's with Life Counseling Solutions. She's, you know, she's been on TV shows. She's pretty sought out. She's awesome. We were invited on a radio show together, right? She sees something in me, and she's like, I want you to join my team. And I was like, yes, this is going to be awesome, right? So it was, fast paced. She was building this practice and we talked about things that I could do. I made some big promises and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to write articles because that's what we're doing. I can do this. I can do this all day every day." So I was doing I said I could do an article a week. I wasn't doing an article a week. I wasn't. I had a lot of excuses. I always had something and she gave me feedback one day. And okay. And I think I absorbed this feedback. I didn't just absorb it, I digested it, I took it, it changed me. It really did because I really respected her. And she knew what she was talking about. I really, she had already seen something in me that maybe I hadn't seen in myself. So she said, "Hey, Jojo, I do need to tell you something that just so you know, it's okay that you don't do 4 a month. Like it's okay. If you can only do one, just do one. But you make a lot of promises." She didn't say it in these exact words. She was so gentle and she's so good. She said, basically, you're making promises, you're not keeping them, and you're full of excuses.
Ouch.
Basically, I just not that I played the victim role, I was going through a lot, but I would just come in and just dump that all on her. And that's the reason why all this I'm like, "What in the world is happening here?" So when she told me that, it changed my life. It really did,
Like in a good
in
way?
a great way.
Like that's what you needed to hear.
That was the first time I think anyone really just gave me a gentle kind of confrontation and feedback on my crap, where it was like, "This isn't okay." Because you can be going through stuff like that happens. I don't know if you see this a lot. Like,
Yeah.
so this is actually a toxic trait that is in one of the articles, 4 types of toxic friends. And, they talk about the victim, right? We've all been the victim.
Yeah.
We've all played this victim role because life happens. And if you're late, you show up and all these things. But it's like, you know what? You were late. You still were late. So the lack of ownership because whatever you're going through outweighs whatever it is that's happening, and I was doing that. And that was the first time that I had looked at a trait in me that was now bleeding onto other things. It was bleeding into my professional life, now my relationship with this individual. So she called me out, and thank you, Janie Lacey, for calling me out. That helped me a lot.
Yeah. And that's different than saying it how it is. That's more of like that
Yeah.
compassionate, and that's what you need to hear because in that time that was a toxic. Would you say that was a toxic trait that you were like the over promising,
Yeah.
like you weren't showing up. It was more the excuses.
That just, yeah, and victimizing, just kind of seeing my issues as bigger than I can listen. It
The
doesn't matter.
responsibility.
It doesn't matter how minor I was evaluating what I didn't do as less than what I was experiencing. That's not fair. That I have to carry my own crap.
Yeah.
If I make promises and I can't keep it, I own it, I adjust. I can't keep bringing the same excuses over and over again. So I would say that was one of them, like the victimization. Definitely people pleasing. I had to be liked. You kidding me? If I wasn't liked, like what do I have to do to like
Make you be liked.
yes.
Yeah. And when that article that you said about can we talk about that?
Let's do
About
it.
the toxic traits in a friendship. And so you said it victimization. What other one did you say?
She talked about 4. She talked about the hero, the pot stirrer, she talked about the victim, and the other one escapes me. I'll have to get back to that one.
And so because like I think that that's the main thing that people do focus on. It's like toxic traits that you can recognize in other people, but what are other things that we can see in ourselves as like maybe a friend or because I'm kind of thinking about like as a friend times that I've been toxic, even of like not bringing up an issue because I would avoid confrontation. I still struggle with it, to be honest. I still struggle with bringing up. It's like it builds up, and I'm like, I need to have the conversation, and then I have it, and I have the conversation, but it's like it's still not a natural thing, And so what maybe are areas that someone can be like, okay, this is not healthy, like in a friendship to do?
Well, one of the things that we talk in relationships is that oftentimes really toxic people, like narcissists and other, you'll see some, personality disorders and
Mm-hmm.
other mental health issues, but I'm not going to use those coined words. I'm just going to just refer to it as some toxic people.
Yeah.
They will tell on themselves by what they're accusing you of.
Mm.
So if you are chronically finding what's toxic in your friendships,
Mm-hmm.
that can be pretty toxic. Just
Yeah.
number one.
Yeah.
The number one, I would say, are you constantly searching for what's toxic in you as my friend?
Yeah.
I would say that's definitely one. There's a lot of toxicity in assumption, just in general. It's just not healthy. And I know that's one of mine still currently that I work with. In silence, I lean in assumption. I lean towards that assuming and what could it be? What does it mean? Even as the latest, I think the last time I did that was today. Just
Mm-hmm.
when, I was telling my husband something over the phone and there was a bit of a silence and I was talking about like dinner plans for our kids and it
Mm-hmm.
was really like some like, not A plus mom type dinner plans for our kids, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
was quiet. And it was like this, I almost went into explaining why it was such a simple meal for our kids. So dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I almost did it. And then he was like, oh, cool. That'll be easy. And I'm like, what the? I was about to assume it just
So you're
today.
going to assume something negative, like,
Yes.
oh, he thinks that's dumb, or that's not a good idea, or
Yeah.
like, oh, is he wants to take over, like, and make the plans? Like, it was kind of like in a negative way.
Yeah. Yeah. So that kind of just figuring it out, you need to stop. And even when you are trying to confront a friend, right? Because the word is confront, but just discuss something with a friend. So I'll use a different word to make it just easier. Why do we have to bring something as if we are presenting this big world issue? Like, homegirl, chill.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why don't we just ask questions?
Yeah.
Like, hey, what's up? What's up? How you doing?
Yeah.
How about you just ask them how they're doing?
That reminds me of we had the panel conversation about friendship. And I think that I have found myself, I will speak for myself, that I sometimes you assume maybe not the best intention, like, oh, she didn't answer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because she's mad at me, or like, oh, she's posting on her story and she's ignoring me, or like, like we go to this negative
Oh, man.
space, and that is unhealthy. Like, that's not a healthy mindset in a friendship, but that can show up in a lot of things. When the three bubbles are in the typing and then they go away, we're like,
You were gonna say something. What happened? Say it.
Say it with your chest.
That was cute. That was cute.
Yes, it's like you're like in there, or like if you say something through text that could be taken a certain way, and I feel like then we can see the worst in someone else. I recently heard, I was involved in a situation of someone kind of expressing like an issue that they had with someone else, and my suggestion to them after hearing both sides, it was like, hey, like, I think that maybe there was a miscommunication. Like, I think you guys meant the same and maybe you misunderstood each other. But it was maybe the tone that you said it, or what you went to conclusions about, versus like trying to understand or ask deeper questions to understand where they're coming from. And that can ruin a lot of friendships and relationships.
So much. But then here's the thing, it gives you a false sense of control when you've evaluated it in your mind and you've kind of made that, again, back to the same word, assumption. It's like you're not in control of it. And this is another individual who has a completely different upbringing than you, different, way of processing. Do you know how their first 2 years of their life went and their attachment style and how, everybody
Yeah.
deals with things completely different. And if we have a bond and we have a friendship, I have to focus on that intent. I use that to filter first. And I trust your heart. Okay. Elizabeth has always taken care of my heart. She's always cared about me. I'm seeing some things going on. Okay. Now it's time to communicate. Always with what's going on, my love. I statements. I'm feeling like you're just maybe a little distant with me and I don't want to overthink it, but if you need some space or if there's anything I can do in this process, in this time that you're, I'm here.
Yeah. And that's giving a space for them to share with you, or maybe they won't, but it's like you're putting it out there.
And maybe it's really not about you. Be okay with that.
I think also when we put people like, so the other part of like us seeing it within ourselves is also like when we call people toxic. And I'm glad that we're focusing today on just toxic, not like narcissistic and everything, because that's a whole nother, you can go back to those episodes. Those are a little more. But like the toxic of other people, we're very easy to see that, part. But there's also half of the time, I would say more than half of the time, it's not about you. Like if someone's acting a certain way, it's not about you. It's like their own internal struggle.
And that help when you can actually understand that, the level of peace that enters your mind, your body, when you walk into work, when you walk into Thanksgiving dinner, when are hanging out with that toxic sibling or, whatever it is. Because there's always one.
Yeah.
But can I tell you something too? When you always notice what it is that trait bothers you, can you just look at yourself for a second? Why does it bother you so much? Either reduce it in your mind and in your space, spend less time with that individual, whatever it is that you have to do, but
because there are situations that, do you feel like it'll never stop bothering you? Like, do you feel like every person that, let's say it's like a trigger, like a toxic person that's just like always there and you're like, well, I can't get rid of them, right? Like, is it possible to get to the place where it's like, yeah, but like it still bothers me? I know that the goal is like to not get triggered by it, but like if it is still bothering you, is it that it's like unhealed in you?
So here's the thing with that. Okay. Because healing does have different phases, right? So it goes through, I could think that I've worked through everything. I have, kind of processed everything, like let's say with my family. Then you become a parent and then they question your parenting. And it's back,
Yeah.
and it's back. Here we are, right? Front and center, ready to handle it. So it's going to look different. You have to have grace with yourself and forgiveness, even with yourself, and say, okay, so it's popping up again, but it's probably it could look a little different. I'm in a different stage in my life. Maybe, I just experienced something really difficult. Maybe I was going through a breakup. Well, now Sally is annoying, extra annoying because she's so damn critical,
Yeah.
that now I have to face her. Okay, I used to be able to enter the happy place. Well, I don't have that same patience.
Yeah.
So you recognize those things and you always have to have your exit plans. So because Sally is who she is, she has that much control over my own belief systems or my values. Because one of my values is that I'm not going to get myself to the point where I'm calling anybody out of their name. You're not going to get me to the point where I am, stepping out of my own character. It's going to take a lot.
Yeah.
There's always, there are going to be some buttons. There are going to be some buttons. If those are
Yeah.
pushed, sometimes we have to defend ourselves. But you know what I'm talking about, right? Because we're human. But how much control, how much power are you really giving her? So yeah, no, you haven't fully. You haven't. There's something else you need to evaluate now.
Yeah, there is, because I think about even myself of like certain people that I know that are still in that, and I'm aware that there's still some healing to do, because there's still certain things that happen, or because of my expectations of like accepting them from who they are, that they'll never change. I think that's hard for me. Then I'm like, ugh, it's just, they only went to therapy. If they only got the help that they needed, they would be so good.
I'm gonna take my therapist hat real quick off. When you say that, the first thing that came to me, and I know it was with the therapist hat off, and it was actually in Spanish. Tenle pena. Like not feel sorry for them, because I feel like it feels a little different when you say it in Spanish, but have some pity.
Have some
compassion. There you go. That's a better word.
Compassion for
Have
them.
some compassion and go, that must really suck.
Yeah.
To be stuck in such a place that you bring it everywhere.
Yeah.
To be that person that people go, okay, like you have to prepare to be around me. Imagine if Sally knew that. Sorry, Sally, if your name is Sally and you're watching this.
Sorry.
I apologize. It's better than saying Karen. I'm giving them a break.
Oh, yes.
I have an Aunt Karen. She's
or a
awesome.
Chad. Or
Karen,
Chad.
I'm
What are the
sorry.
other names? I'm sorry. What are the other
What
names
is
people
it? I don't know. I always say Sally and Cindy, so I'm sorry. I know a cool Cindy too. But anyways,
use?
I can go off on this. I can go.
No, but I agree. I think it's like having compassion with understanding that. You know what I just thought about another toxic trait is when you stonewall. Like someone that like just doesn't like silent treatment because you're like processing.
No,
But
you
it's
ain't.
actually not healthy.
So you're not this. Okay, yes, we can process. Here's the thing: processing without communication is toxic. Processing without letting the other person know is can be abusive, emotionally abusive. Because okay, so I'm an overthinker, right? Whatever, no big deal. Which it has helped me a lot in the past to be an overthinker. It keeps me safe, you know, childhood stuff. But if I'm partnered with someone who knows I'm an overthinker and for them they stonewall, recipe for disaster. What if we were mature enough to do this? Hey babe, I am just in my feels. I don't even know exactly what I'm feeling. I think I need to take 24 hours to like think about this. Then you give it to them. But let me tell you, when those 24 hours are up,
You contact them.
you come crawling back. Now, you can even if you don't if
Yeah.
you need more time, you need more time. But
Yeah.
you keep it to your word. That consistency builds trust. Trust takes years to build, truly. Seconds to break, but years to build.
Yeah.
You know?
And that is an overthinkers and someone that has anxiety, that just makes you go insane. Like the whole silent treatment, not talking, it feels like a punishment. And that isn't healthy at all. But I think that some people take it as like, well, I need my space, you know? But it's like that's not healthy.
And people can convince themselves, like truly, they can convince themselves like that is what they're doing is like they're taking their space and they're owning it and I don't have to. Oh, okay, but what message are you really delivering?
Yeah.
Because now you have to explain yourself. I can go.
Yeah.
I can be.
And then the other side of that, though, because I do want to be like the devil's advocate, is the other side of like respecting and not trying to pry or force someone to do something, because that can be toxic.
I've done that.
No, me too.
Oh my God, a lot.
Try to guilt trip someone or try to make them.
So my husband, we all have our little stuff. So his thing is, it was always like his was stonewalling for sure, because he's a super calm guy. It's like one of his best traits is that he can practice so much self control. He doesn't yell, he doesn't curse, he doesn't like do all these things. He is as you see him, he's calm, peaceful presence. But sometimes that calm, peaceful presence is very quiet. And I will be like, I need to know, I need to know, I need to know. Not like that, but that's what he hears. He's not hearing, let's talk about this. He's hearing, I need to know, I need to know. I'm invading his space. So yeah, at that point, then it's just, again, it's like, it's about you. Yeah. If just maybe, the world doesn't revolve around you, you can just stop for a second and say, I'm going to respect that person's space, but I'm going to communicate it. I did my part. Keep your hands clean, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't, not everything is the smart move to get to the top. Keep your cards close to you. That could work in some spaces.
You're like, actually, it depends.
That could work in some spots. But in relationships where you are vulnerable and giving your heart, you know what? Communicate. I don't know what I'm really feeling. If I don't know what I'm feeling, I don't know what I'm feeling.
I don't know. Or you're going to have to give me some time to think about that. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
But that comes with the awareness of that you're allowed to ask for that and have that space.
Have you ever given feedback to someone when they weren't ready?
Yeah.
That was tough.
Super defensive.
That's tough.
Reactive.
That's really tough.
And you feel like you're trying to get the message across, but it's not landing. It's not landing.
And it gets somehow flipped on you?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's tough.
Yeah. And also like knowing when to say it. So that has to do with knowing when to say things.
Yeah.
And knowing that not everything needs to be said either.
Boom, right there. Not everything needs to be said. Your need to be heard is greater than the peace in the situation. And that, again, that's back to your self-reflecting. That's back to looking at yourself and saying, you know what? I just have such a need to be heard. Where haven't you been heard? Take that to counseling. Talk to your
Yeah.
therapist about it. I have a need to be heard because I was not heard growing up. That's actually, there we go. We have identified.
Mm-hmm.
Therapist Elizabeth, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Because I would say so
Yeah.
much of my need to just express things came from a place of not being heard as a
Yeah.
kid, you know?
That's even an overpowering communication. Like when you try to overpower or like y- like maybe get louder or maybe dominate the conversation. That can also be another. Am I right?
You're so right.
Maybe I'm kind of a therapist.
Right now I'm like feeling this. This is kind of good.
Wow.
I don't know.
I told Sueli, this is like side note, but she's like, she's like, I'm talking to her or something, and she's like, and I'm like, maybe it's this. She's like, you self-diagnose yourself. I'm like, I really do. It's kind of bad. But at the same time, it's helpful to talk about it with someone else. Like you start seeing things in yourself.
Mhm. Yeah.
Every time.
Every time. And there's times it's still to this day. I'll be 40 in February. I know.
Queen.
I know.
Love it.
It's like I'm going to sit in that for a second. And I am still learning something every single day. Still in counseling. And it's like a maintenance piece.
Yeah.
I don't have to be in this, traumatic event to say, I need to talk to someone. No, you know what? I'm in a new stage in my life and I just want a different angle, you know?
Yeah, I think that was one of the questions that I wanted to talk about, which I feel like that's the answer is can you be healed or healing and still be toxic?
Ooh, come on. Can you be healed or in the process of healing and still be toxic? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because it is such a process. So, okay, think about all the undoing. Those neural pathways have been built, they have been set, they are, those are like those brick wall, like those brick streets that you see in Italy. Never been there, but I see them on TV. Where they're built. So you're chipping away at something that has been your safety, that has been your protection. Why do you think you're toxic? Why do you think you have toxic traits? Unless you have some sort of mental health disorder, personality disorder, if you have toxic traits, it's because it kept you safe at some point, right? At some point, even manipulation.
Yeah.
Somehow that worked for you. You witnessed it, you saw it, you had to be able to manipulate. Blame shift, that kept you safe. Somehow, by not being in that seat, it allowed you to survive whatever the situation you're in. Okay, so you know all these things now, but have you ever I've never been 40 before. What is it going to look like now with hormone shifts? Which, please, I don't know. Let's delay that as long as possible.
A lot of compassion during that.
A lot of compassion.
You still have like 10 years.
Por favor.
It's okay.
Diosito. Yeah, let's give it 10 more years. But for real. So I haven't been in that stage in my life. So what will it look like?
Yeah.
And
how can those old habits come back up during that season?
Okay. So, well, in any season. So how about a friendship breakup? So let's say I've done all this healing, but I've never had a friend break up with me. I'm 40 years old. I had a friend somewhat ghost me. The thoughts that went through my mind as to what the heck is happening, if I'm being fully vulnerable, it's like, how is this happening at almost 40 years old? How is this almost happening? Before I'm a therapist, I'm a friend.
Yeah.
I will lay down my license. I'd rather be a great friend to my spouse, a wonderful parent to my children that I can eventually be friends, but So just that stage alone, going, okay, what did I do wrong? Could I have done something different? Going through, just every different part of that situation. Yeah, it's gonna pop up. Yeah. It's gonna pop up because I didn't think I'd experience that at 40. Okay, so what if I go through a divorce at 50? So during each of those stages, you've never been through that. Yeah. But we've said a few times now, Therapist Elizabeth, about compassion. Yeah. But you know what we do? We beat ourselves up. We'll point it out. And Dr. Brene Brown she talks about foreboding joy, and she talks about dress rehearsing tragedy to beat vulnerability to the punch. She was onto something. She researched it. She's a doctor. She's famous for it. She's amazing. If you haven't read her books, she's awesome.
I love her.
But she was onto something there. you
And
know?
what would you say is like the biggest thing that you see with a lot of people that like is it just that is the lack of self-awareness, or it's more like they're going to come up, like those toxic traits are going to come up, but it's how you manage it? Like what is it?
Okay, so I cannot control the first thoughts that go through my mind.
Mhm.
I really can't. But let me tell you, the work I've done, I know now what to do from that thought going forward. So let's say you were in that situation. We have completely different upbringings. We have different lives,
Mhm.
right? So if it was yours, your first thought might be, let's say, if you have, rejection in your past and things like that. So if your first thought was, of course this would happen. I must have been, I wasn't there enough. I didn't do this enough. It's like you catch your thought and you go, okay, you replace a lie with a truth. What is the truth? I have been a really good friend. I communicated with her. I told her that I'm here for her, that there isn't anything that she can't tell me. As a grown woman, she made a decision to not tell you. As a grown woman, she made a decision to not reply to your text message. As a grown woman, she turned her back to you. Now she has to sit in those consequences, and I'm going to sit in mine. But I'm mature enough that a conversation happens, I can sit in it.
Mhm.
I can sit in it.
Like if it comes up again, if she wanted to have a conversation, you would have the conversation.
Me personally, I would because I can handle it. Someone else, you have to know. You have to know. For me, I have enough. I do have this special compassion for like those moments for others because
Yeah.
it's
You're
like
like, maybe you don't know what was happening during that time with that person that made them act that way. So if they do come and they say like, "Hey, this is what was really happening," you would be like understanding.
1,000%. Will it ever be the same? No.
Mhm.
Meaning this, like, you have to guard
Yeah.
the guard will be different, but the love would be. I think I have forgiven a lot in the past.
Yeah.
So to me, I don't like to leave things. I don't know, maybe that's a toxic trait, but I don't like to leave things just left that way when it comes to friendships. Now,
Like you need
romantically,
closure.
I like closure. I don't necessarily need to engage in a conversation for
Mhm.
closure, but if that other person needs closure, I'm happy to help facilitate that for you. I'm happy to participate in that for you if that helps you. I have enough closure. But if you need something, I'm here. I'm okay with that. We want my experience? I will. Will I tell it to you with love? I sure will. Will I tell it to you with respect? I sure will. Are you a human just deserving of love and God's forgiveness just as much as me? Absolutely. Doesn't negate the fact that you hurt me, doesn't negate the
Mhm.
fact that I lost trust in you. But sure, I can do that for you.
And so as like we're thinking about this topic and kind of wrapping up, what are maybe some things that we want to maybe leave with our audience about like seeing the last things of like we talked about stonewalling, we talked about maybe like the victim mindset, like
Mhm.
different things like that. So what are other things that maybe you can be aware in yourself and others, and how to navigate that through different seasons?
You know, I think the very first thing is to make a decision on how you want to handle conflict. Like, make it like a decision that you're gonna stick by, that,
Mhm.
I don't and you can even take inventory of where you've gone low as to where you've seen some ugly sides of you. Because if I go back, I can totally do that. So you have to understand that's almost like the place in your life where you go, "Okay, this is a non-negotiable for me," right? A non-negotiable for me is to never do A, B, or C because I'm capable of ugly things. We're human. Understand that. The second thing is to before you start looking at others and anything else is to do your own personal inventory of your own life, the patterns in your life, the relationships in your life, where the struggles been, do they continue to occur again? Have
Mhm.
you talked to anybody about this?
Mhm.
Get feedback from people that love you.
Mhm.
Get feedback and not in an insecure way.
Mhm.
Not in a way like, okay, so where am I bad? Where can I be a better
Yeah.
friend? No, how do you experience me?
Mhm.
I had a wonderful friend, Augusto. He is a therapist as well. He gave me some feedback on how he experienced me in a situation. And again, I trusted his heart so much that I
Mhm.
really did listen.
Mhm.
Be prepared to hear
Yeah.
and not explain why you acted that way or why you did that.
Mhm.
You
Just
know?
acknowledge and and like be like, okay, I'm gonna get better at that. Like mental note.
And if I had to end with something, I could go on, by the way. I could go on, just let me know. Is uh to not take it personal.
I think that's the part.
That is the part. Everything feels personal because we, this is our world. But I can promise you, Elizabeth, my money on it, whatever's in my
Yeah.
savings. I would say 90% of the time it's not personal. It's not personal. It's not. So if it's not personal, then remove yourself from it. Understand that you have an option to participate or observe. You can observe. There's been plenty of times where I've sat around at like a family dinner. I'm observing.
Do people ask you like what's wrong? They're like, you're not talking.
Well,
You're
my
not sharing.
observation and participation looks different. So participating is emotionally involved. So they don't know how much I'm participating emotionally, But I am participating because I'm here. I'm in the moment.
Yeah.
And if this is what it looks like, I don't have the option to change it. And it's not supposed to be changed.
Yeah.
I don't have to change it. Maybe they would have been better off with a different sibling, or maybe they would have been better off with a different spouse, et cetera, et cetera. The world doesn't revolve around me. It's self-righteous of me to think that I would have the best plan as to how family dinner should go or how.
Yeah.
No, okay. I'm wise enough to see what's okay, what's not, what's toxic, what's not okay. Because also what's toxic for me is different for you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
What's healthy for my life?
And I think that feedback is so important. I've had people like two people, especially in like the event space, because as events, they are chaotic and it's a lot. In the beginning, because She Cultivates is actually like my friends and people that I know. So it's hard sometimes doing things with people that you know that you're friends with and you do life with.
Yeah.
And I remember in the beginning when I was kind of in the zone of like running around or things would happen, like the couch broke, or there was no AC at the venue, like stuff that like happens when you're doing events. I would go into like a zone that I would kind of black out and I wouldn't breathe. Like I would literally be running like around, like, and you can feel my anxiety in the room. Like you can feel. And so I had the people around me tell me like, Liz, like it's so obvious when you wear on your face, like in your presence, when you're like just stressed or overwhelmed. And then you go like to people's stuff, like to people's areas that I delegated, and I start doing it for them because I'm like, you're not fast enough. Like this is, and I was like, this is embarrassing. But I didn't take it personal because at the end of the day, my relationship with them is more important than anything. And I want our dynamic to be good. And I would say, if my friends are listening, I have gone 1,000% better with that. Like during event flow, do things still happen or do I still feel anxious or stressed? Like, yes, but I feel like now I'm aware of it. And so I'm like, Lizzie, like, no, like, let's bring it back. Let's breathe. Like, let's let oxygen flow to your brain, like, let's not like get zoned in. And I've had other people that like with love have told me things that I'm like, yeah, I have to work on that. Like I've had someone tell me that I'm like selfish, that I was being very selfish, or like, you're always like about you and like all this other stuff. And I didn't think about it. I was like, wait, what? No, it's about you, like in my head, But I took it in and I was like, I see where like that could be selfish.
That's huge, girl.
Yeah.
Come on, somebody.
And I feel like in those moments, it does feel like we have a choice to take it defensive or if it's like, okay. And sometimes it depends who you're getting that feedback from, because maybe I would listen to someone that maybe isn't as close or has had not that much hours clocked in.
You gotta have some hours clocked in.
Yeah. So it was different, but all that to say is like, there's definitely a lot of things that can happen and growth that happens when you're able to have that self-awareness of like, I can be toxic too. And even as we quote unquote, sometimes we use that whole like healing of like, especially in the space of like, now, like once you reach healness, full wholeness, it's like, I really don't believe in that. I feel like we're always a work in progress. And I feel like you stop growing when you think that you've made it.
Oh, that's a huge red flag.
Yeah.
A huge red flag when it's like, I've come to this place. I'm already at this place that is blah, 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 blah. It's, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's you. That's your own denial. That's your own self-preservation and protection.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, you need to sit with someone and bounce. And it's like people sit in a chair and they think that that's where it's like, this must be rock bottom.
Mm-hmm.
What if that is the greatest gift you can give yourself? The permission to be seen, to be heard, and to be helped.
Mm-hmm.
It's huge.
Yeah. I mean, being given another like lens, another view of a situation. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And I know we can talk forever. And every time it's like, we're just going to chat. We're just going to chat about
I could
this.
keep going, for sure.
No, for sure. No, and I appreciate this conversation because I definitely feel like this resonates with me of areas that still pop up, and areas within ourselves, and things to also be aware of in others, but it always starts with us.
It does.
So thank you so much, Jojo, for being a part again. Is there any last words of encouragement you would like to give someone today listening?
Be kind to yourself. And being kind to yourself doesn't mean that you're excusing yourself. It just means that you're not going to use punishment to be the better version of yourself. That's it. So being kind just means I am choosing the softer way to being a better person. Because I'm going to tell you right now, being mean to yourself doesn't help.
Yeah.
So be kind, love others well, be open to feedback. And I'm going to say it again, because I don't know who didn't hear it in the back, but don't take it personal. Don't take it personal. Move on.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jojo. I will put all her information down below, as well as the link of the new Toxic Relationship Edition. And toxic all things.
All toxic all things.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And thank you guys for tuning into this week's podcast episode. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to this podcast, leave a review, and I'll see you guys next week.